Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for stopping by again. This could be a little off and on today. My landlord is, I rent here, my landlord is doing some repairs and repainting and things of this sort. And I think it's going to be a difficult day in that sense. So having enough time and quiet to complete a video is questionable. So I may have to do this in pieces over the day and maybe into next morning, who knows. We have some heavy-duty painting to get done today. In any event, discussions here since the last troubles, the disagreement that closed down the Pan American Highway, they continue. They're made a lot of progress. They've got more to do. There are some threats of them stopping traffic again. Basically, it boils down to it's going fairly much the way it has gone in the past, although I hope not, because typically the unions, a union in particular, will push and push and push until finally there is a confrontation with the police, which should be utterly unnecessary. But as it is, they have not a popular group in the society right now. I think you need to remember that we have our own situation here, and if you take your situation and lay it down on top of ours, you're going to misunderstand everything. Okay? So one of the first things to understand is that it was the truckers. Okay? And what they're bringing needs to be brought in from the farms, basically fruits and vegetables and meat, from the West into the urban market. Otherwise, they lose huge amounts of money. So they're not happy with the idea of there not being any transportation. Meanwhile, 80% of the population lives on the other side. They're the kind receiving it. Now, they have alternatives because we also have agriculture in that portion of the country too, but it can't meet the needs of the metro market. That's why the West is necessary. Their input is necessary to keep the market stable. But of course it means we end up having to import food and paying more for it and so forth, either from Colombia, where they have larger agricultural outfits. But I think in the final analysis we're going to end up with more and more hydroponics. I mean, over time, focusing on agriculture in a relatively small footprint in an environmentally sensitive way, to the extent humanly possible. We need to get this done. As I've said earlier, it can give a career path to young people in agriculture, which I think is necessary. And it also helps to reduce dependency on anybody, anywhere. It just sort of balances things out. Now, they do that out in the West, too. I mean, I'm not suggesting we should separate ourselves from the West. But we do need to get a little bit more organized in our thinking about where the population is and where it needs to be fed, because they get really irritated. And so the end result is that everyone understands that there's a problem here and we got to work something out. But there's always a bunch of people who got to go over the top or do something, go too far, and then that causes nothing but more anger and bitterness and so on. It just leaves people with a bitter taste in their mouth that they've been put through that again. I'm just saying that because I don't take either side in this one. I just see what I've seen before, and we'll see what happens. But it's not, I don't lose any sleep over it. It is going to be taken care of, that's all, one way or another here within the country. It's important to us that we maintain our standing with the rating agencies, and as our investment grade, and Standard & Poor's just came out and kept us in that category. I mean, it's right on the edge because there are so many concerns. I mean, it's about everybody in the world, really, when you get right down to it. Our problems here are minor compared to what they have in our neighboring countries and all over Latin America and globally. So, but still, not a good thing to be on the edge like that. But at least they have said, okay, we think you can work this thing out, so you maintaining that. The others will speak up when Fitch and Moody's, the other two major rating groups. We'll see what they have to say. In the meantime, we keep working on it. So that's that. Now, beyond that, I just want to say that I want to talk to you a little bit today, and just a little, not too much, I promise, is one of the biggest problems I see all the time coming down from North America and from Europe particularly is a lot of short-term thinking. It's so different than from that first decade when I was down here, starting in 2004, started talking to people, meeting a lot of people, and getting a feel of them. In those early years, there was a big boom market going on in real estate. And Americans in particular were coming down with far more money than they had anticipated getting when they sold their homes up north. And these were retirees. So they came down with plenty of more cash than they had expected. And the market here was unprepared for them, and they didn't have a lot of what you call expat quality housing or whatever. They had it, but not anywhere near enough. Lots of things happened. It was very cheap initially, so a lot of people got into it. It brought prices up, but even with the rise in prices, people were still coming down each year with more money than they had expected the year before, until that blew up north. Then, it's just like clockwork, and I mean really surprisingly, the overlap was minor, but it was a very clear shift. Went to the Venezuelans, who had the money. The first ones that came over were people with money. Later on came the middle class, and then the working class, and so forth. We have plenty of people from Venezuela, understandably. But anyhow, their arrival kept the market in the city quite stable, even rising in some areas. The real hit was taken out in the West because they're dependent on retirees. And now, retirees are facing a different situation. Not only were housing prices falling, but the stock market at the same time was going through another fall, a crash, if you like. By March of 2009, as I remember, it was pretty shaky and no fun to have to watch unfold. And I've been involved a lot with the statistical end of it up north and keeping an eye on this sort of thing, so I was aware of it. And it showed up in the attitude of people coming down, which was unhappiness, fear that things were going to get worse, not knowing exactly what to do, and above all, not being able to sell the home up in the U.S. or Canada in particular, that and getting the price that they had expected that they were going to get. See, all this time, they had been pleasantly surprised by expectations of getting more money and more money each year. Now we're in the reverse, and even though the amount of money they could get for the house now would be far more than they might have gotten, say, 3 or 4 years earlier, when they were originally doing many of their computations, it doesn't make any difference. The point is, it wasn't as much as last year or the year before that, and so on. So the whole attitude was dramatically different. Well, we got through that period and without too much damage, and the country did fine. It continued to grow at a much slower pace. But while other countries were losing and dropping, we rose. That was fine. Then we move along. However, in recent years, it's been different. And it's a continuation of that now. We can't compare to that earlier years. We say we have a buyer's market here. Well, we do, but in certain respects, but not for everybody. I mean, look at Europe, for example. There are a lot of Europeans who are interested. I have a lot of European members. Hello, everybody. They have a situation where the dollar is so strong. It's just not, and we're priced in dollars. For them to come in, it's just, suddenly the buyer's market becomes a pretty ordinary market. It doesn't seem like they're saving a lot of money coming at this stage, understandably. And likewise, the Canadians have had their bad moments with the Canadian dollar. It is balanced. The U.S. dollar is just extremely strong. And while that's true, everybody who deals in another currency is going to find a reduction in the benefits of this buyer's market, and will reduce the number of people coming, or not give them the incentive they would have had otherwise. Now, there's a group beyond that, though, and those are South Americans with dollar accounts, if many have, over decades, because of the ups and downs of their countries and all the troubles they've had. It's very common for them to keep bank accounts in the U.S. dollar wherever they can to keep it away from their own governments. And of course, much of that's been kept up in the United States. In Miami has been a major financial center. But many of them keep them here. So as a result, I mean, it's not secret or anything. This boils down to is that it's here. No other outside government can come in and take it away from them. So here they have it. Now they can purchase. And for them, it is a buyer's market. If you have dollars, it's a buyer's market. It's as simple as that. If you don't, then it's a different story, but it may still be useful. In the long run, everything balances out eventually, but who knows when the long run comes. So for the moment, we have to deal with that, and it has an impact. I would say to people, particularly people in Europe, that the outlook is not very good, as you know very well, for this coming winter. There are a whole host of reasons I wouldn't even begin to go through. Beyond those that trouble individual nations who are members of the EU, for example, there are those that trouble the entire EU, and then those that affect everybody in the European Union, or everybody in Europe, regardless of whether they're part of the EU or not. So you've got all these things going on, and it can be very disheartening, but at the same time, it may lead to an increase. We may see the European wave. If the dollar should come down a bit, we may see Europeans coming in greater numbers. And my suggestions to them is that, I mean, my attitude is the same attitude I have toward North America, China, Russia, and Europe and whole, is that that's not where I want to be right now, you know. And certainly not in Russia or in China, but I don't want to be in Europe or North America at this point in time, because it might get rough down here, maybe. It's nothing like that you're already at currently. So if you may want to keep your options open here. I use the French term pied-à-terre to describe it for many Europeans, and it means a foot to the ground. And what it really boils down to is the idea that you have a second home, and might be inexpensive. It might be a couple $100,000, which would get you the friendly nations visa as cheap as it gets, or you might go $300,000 if you've got it. Then you get permanent residency to boot and so forth, and you could do that. Or if you're not even concerned about that, you just want to have something that you own in dollars that's available to you, then, hey, okay, it can be done at any level. But you might give that thought at some point. And you have to balance all these things. I know how difficult, very definitely how difficult it can be for people to judge what they should do. The future simply is not knowable by most, but what we can see, or by anybody. But it, the outline is that it's going to be a difficult few months. If you think it's going to be especially difficult for you, you might think it in those terms. I don't know. Just saying that we are in a period, as they've been saying really since the stock market collapse at the end of the 20th century, is that we're in uncharted waters. We have been in uncharted waters the whole time. And most of what people expected to happen, I mean, year after year, I was told what was definitely going to happen, didn't happen. There were lots and lots of theories and ideas, and it was obvious that given what happened in the last century and the 20th century, this is what was going to happen now, and it didn't work out that way at all. And it hasn't since. So using the 20th century as a model for the 21st is a big mistake, right, from my perspective. So I say you really sort of have to look at it with fresh eyes. You have to look at it in your current situation. What you see, whether you like it or not, potentially coming down. Try not to get overly negative, though, but still, nonetheless, taking a look at what may go right or wrong over the next few years, who knows how long. On that basis, make a judgment as to whether or not Panama or any other country is a good place for you to go. That's a lot to say, but I wanted to say it somehow, because to think only in the short term, like this week, next week, this incident here, this attack over there, whatever, that you're being treated like a ping pong ball, and you're the one who decides that. Don't let that happen. You can bounce all over Kingdom Come, and then you get way off the board, so to speak, way off to one side or the other, and you may never make it back. So we need to focus on ourselves, our own situations, the current reality as we see it now, and the sense of what's coming down the road. And if this is a good place for you, fine. But it may be staying where you are. I don't know. Your decision, always your decision in the final analysis. It's the only decision that's the right one for you. Good. Just wanted to talk about that. Now I am going to take a break for a moment here, just check to see whether I've got somebody out in the hallway. False alarm. I will any moment now. So I'm going to sort of wrap this up with one example. I'm going to be sharing something with you in the next video. I do my due diligence too, before I mention things to you specifically. And it's a very new, and it's something I've been following actually for several years, but it just hasn't been able to get to a point where it was practical, where people knew how to go about doing it, and successfully. And that, I believe, has happened, and I am talking to them, trying to get a better idea of things. Then I want to introduce it to you so you're aware of it. It's another alternative, and it's the only place in the world you can find it. And it's being this month in this nation is going to be presented, because this is where they've been doing all the work on it. So I will get back to you with that. But as I say, I like to check things out thoroughly myself. And although I'm very pleased so far with what I hear and what I see, I will need a little bit more. And in any event, I expect to give you I will give you a decision of one sort or another as to whether, not a decision, a recommendation or not, for it to be included in the list of things that you look at in the next video. But when it's the right time to do it, and when nobody's dropping paint on my head or anything else. So until that time, thank you for stopping by, and I look forward to the next time.